Hello and welcome back. This is my sort of part 2 of a bendy roller tutorial. In my last video, which you should definitely check out, I demonstrated how to actually put the bendy rollers in, and this video is going to be focusing on the brush out process. So if you haven't watched the other one, do check it out, but let's get started and see what we can do with these curls. Alright, let's take the scarf off. Now if you have decided to do a much wetter set than what I demonstrated in the first part, then you just want to make sure that your curl is very, very dry. If there is any kind of dampness or like even just a coldness to your curl, then that could mean that they're just not 100% dry. And if they're not 100% dry and there's still just that like 1% of moisture in the hair, then your curl is likely to drop. They really need to be 100% dry. So if you're struggling with that, either adapt to how much, change how much of a kind of level of wetness you are curling your hair with, lessen the amount of water you're spraying on, or dry it that little bit more, or get yourself a hood dryer. You can get this sort of cheap silver ones that you attach to your blow dryer on eBay and things like that, or like in New Zealand you can pick up these foldable kind of portable hood dryers really cheaply in the thrift shops, secondhand stores. I got mine for about $30 and it works a treat. So I don't tend to need to use it as much, especially these days now that I haven't been doing them as wet, but it's a really good thing to have if you've got the space for it. Just be careful, because I've heard that some of them, like some particular ones of the later models or something, have asbestos in them, which, you probably don't want to be blowing like hot air onto your head, breathing it in for 30 minutes if it's got asbestos. So yeah, not ideal. Now when you're taking these out, I just unfold them and I kind of unwind, give them a little shake, and it helps to release it. If you're finding that perhaps they are just kind of sticking a little bit, that could be from the setting spray you're using. Perhaps the setting spray has a lot of hold, and so especially because of the smoother surface of these rollers compared to a sponge roller, they might just stick a little bit more. If you could also be having issues with the ends of your hair and just the way that you are rolling them, if you haven't been tucking them in nicely with the comb as I demonstrated in the first part, then they might just not be coming out as easily because it's kind of almost like getting knotty around those ends. So just some things to think about if you're struggling, but they should come out pretty easily as I struggle with the final one. There we go. Okay, so yeah. It's very curly. As you can see, it's a really nice tight curl and very kind of ringlety. So this is definitely a lot tighter than my usual kind of foam roller set. Again, it's kind of, a lot of that is due to the size of the roller. So, but because I do have such a tight curl, I'm going to find that that wave as I brush it out will be a lot easier to achieve. Now what I normally do is use my fingers to kind of just break up the curl a little. I find that this is kind of important as you get a little bit further along in your sort of wash cycle, as it gets a bit more product. It can just get a little bit kind of stiffer, so it's just nice to kind of break that product up if it's a little sticky. This used to be way better when I had long nails, but they are now little stumps. And my nails are like, it was kind of like a little comb on the end of my fingers. It's really, really sucks not having long nails anymore. Okay. Now what I like to do is start brushing with a soft cushion brush. So this is just my Denman one. Denman is a really great brand for long-lasting brushes. There's also that Mason Pearson brand, which is like next level expensive, and I'm sure they're good, but I don't know, I feel like Denman does a job. So I'm just going to start brushing through and try and just kind of break up the curls and start to get like a bit of a formation going. As I kind of said in my last video, even if I'm doing like a very similar set to, you know, like last week or the day before or whatever, the hair can just really have a mind of its own, and I might sort of want to have a slightly more, I don't know, like a really curly style, and then the curls are just like a little bit looser, or if I want them to be looser, then they're super curly. So I just kind of like to see what's kind of going on with my hair, figure out what the hair is kind of doing, and just run with that, because I don't have time to like fight my hair. I would rather just go with what it wants to do. So I'm just brushing it down. If your hair is quite knotty and if your ends are not very healthy and they're quite sort of fine and frazzled, you might be finding this a bit of a struggle with kind of knots. So make sure you're starting from the bottom and working your way up, but also get a haircut. It makes such a difference to how your sets are going to turn out if your ends are at least blunt and healthy. The finer your hair gets towards the end, and the more, like when they get really thin and spindly and there's no thickness to it, that is when you're going to get frizz. You're not going to get a nice thick set. So please get a haircut. I'm just going to turn around so you can see what's happening at the back. So I'm starting to get that really nice wave. And always make sure that you're kind of brushing up and underneath as well, because it's really easy to miss like that underneath area. I'm just going to go in with my Denman Classic styling brush, which is more for smoothing. So a cushiony brush with lots of bristles generally is going to fluff the hair out, but it's also a lot softer on the hair, I find, so it's good for like that first initial brush. But then the Classic styling brush, which is kind of like, it's almost like a paddle brush. A paddle brush would also work quite nicely. This just helps to smooth, just due to the bristles. Alright, now I'm going to back comb. This is really important, especially if you want to get the front swoop. For back combing, I use a fine tooth comb with a pintail end. Just going to straighten up my parting. I'm going to take a section, same kind of sort of section as that first roller placement that I did. And I'm going to start right at the root, make sure it's really packed in at the root, and then just gently move my way up. So I'm kind of, when I'm back combing, I'm using sort of like the tips of the comb to just sort of fluff the hair and scoop it down in kind of like a C shape. If your hair is super clean, then you may want to use either like a little spritz of a hairspray, a volume boost, even a dry shampoo, or those powders, just something to like really grit it up, because back combing on clean hair is really difficult. Like it might sort of work initially, but it's not going to really stay. So I'm going sort of reasonably far back. I kind of use the guideline as halfway between my hairline and the crown of my head. So I also like to make sure that I am back combing kind of around here, because this is going to come up and over and it needs some stability sort of through here. So you've got to make sure that you are really back combing right there where it's going to need that support. And a little bit of back combing the opposite way, just so there's no kind of weird sections. And I'm going to do a little bit sort of through the rest of the roots, not quite to the same extent as what I did for the swoop. It just helps to give you like some volume, make sure everything sits nicely. Okay, so now I'm going to go in with my postiche brush or smoothing brush. Some people use this for back combing, and I just don't rate it for back combing, but I do like it for smoothing. And I'm just kind of gently pulling it over the hair without kind of really brushing it through. I'm just aiming at smoothing the top layer over. You don't want to just brush out all that back combing that you just did. So just be nice and gentle. I'm just kind of really using like the side of it. I'm not kind of going in like this. I'm using the side as that's a bit more gentle. And I'm kind of, for the swoop part, I'm kind of brushing it back. I'm going to use my fingers as kind of like my mold. And then I'm going to use my brush in my right hand to really like pull that towards the face again. For this part, if you have really long hair and no shaping around the face, it's going to be very difficult. So I would highly recommend getting a haircut that at least allows a little bit of shaping. I call it face framing and layering around the face, because once this part here gets too long, there's too much weight. You're not going to get this nice shaping automatically through here. So definitely recommend at least making sure you have some sort of layering around the face. It just means that this will kind of happen much more automatically, and it will actually stay. Give this a little spray. I'm using the Maria Nyla Extreme Spray, which is a fully cruelty-free and vegan brand from Stockholm. And I kind of fell in love with it when I was in the UK. Actually, I bought it while I was in Ireland. But now I can't really get it in New Zealand, which sucks. So I'm just going to have to stock up when I'm in Europe later in the year. So now I'm just kind of using my fingers, a combination of my fingers and my comb, to just try and sculpt this part here. As you can see, this is staying out really nicely because I've got that back combing, and it means that I can just kind of work the rest of it. And I'm getting that really nice C shape, so you can see that the curl is coming towards the face, and that's because of the way that I was rolling it in that last section to make sure that I was having that curl coming this way. So it is quite important to take that into consideration, because once the hair is set and going in a certain direction, it's quite tricky to kind of try and force it to go another way. You're just not going to win very easily with that. I've just popped a clip in here. That's just going to help to hold this in place so that as I'm working on this part, I'm not going to accidentally pull this part down. And now I'm just reverting back to my fine tooth comb. I like to switch between this one and the smoothing one, just depending on what I am needing. Like at the moment I'm wanting to like really comb through that whole section to smooth it down, but if I'm just wanting to do surface smoothing, then that's when I'll use the little smoothing brush. I don't tend to really use the full-size brushes at this point. I really just do it kind of in that first part to really brush through everything, and then from there I just really use combs. So I'm just trying to smooth this top layer over, but also brushing these ends a little to try and tame them. And I'm sort of using my hands as well to kind of as a tool to sort of smooth, and I can feel those bumps, so I can feel those waves. And it's really important that you start to kind of try and do things by feel. Your hands are a great tool. They've got the warmth in them, so like they're going to help to set product. So by feeling like the bumps, you can just help to like further smooth and kind of create those waves. I am going to put a side comb in. So these are really handy. You can usually find them, I found these in my local grocery store, sometimes in like a pharmacy, or otherwise eBay or Amazon are, you know, they're always going to have them. So you want to have like the curved side kind of coming towards the head, and I'm going to just push it, position it just behind the ear and push it up towards my face. And it's a really nice, like, tidy way of pinning one side behind the ear. It's kind of important that you do that before you really start finishing this side, because it is going to sort of pull things in a certain way. And if you've really like finished and solidified this section here with hairspray, and then you try and pop this in, it might just kind of mess things up a little. So I'm just working with what the kind of wave is doing, little kind of combing in parts. I just use a small amount of hairspray as I'm working. It is quite hard to do the back on yourself. So you just have to kind of be patient, but also not stress too much, you know. My hair is never like as perfect as, you know, what I can get it on someone else. Once you're kind of happy with the shape, that's when I tend to go crazy on the hairspray. If you've got any little pieces like this, sometimes you can have just like a random row curl, and then like right now, I'm quite warm, my neck's a bit sweaty, so that curl has probably just come down because it's a little damp. Ugh, the summer heat is crazy. So I just like to sort of tease up these bits with my fingers. So I grab one, sort of stretch it out, and I use my finger to just kind of tease it, like when you do almost those ribbons when you're wrapping presents. So I am just gonna start smoothing and spraying with hairspray, using my hands as well to kind of like set that hairspray, coming up and like sort of pushing the curls up at the bottom. It's going to help to just reduce some of that frizz. Make sure you come up and underneath. That's really important because that's the first part that's going to drop, just because it is kind of it's got the friction against your clothing or the heat from your neck. And I think the trick to minimizing the kind of hairspray look is to just kind of build it up slowly with thinner layers. If you go in too hard and fast, it is going to look very hairsprayed. But if you can kind of do just sort of slightly thinner layers, it definitely helps. And I think I've said this in some of my other tutorials, and I've definitely said this in my workshops if you've come to them. Personally, I like my hair to feel crunchy. When it feels crunchy, I know it's going to last, especially if I'm needing it to last all day or for a photo shoot. You know, so maybe some people's hair doesn't need that, but it's my guarantee. So I like to spray it until it feels pretty solid. Now, one thing that I really like to do is to clip this to my head a little bit, because otherwise my swoop feels a little flappy. And if I'm out in any kind of wind, or, you know, especially when I was living in London and I was going on the underground, and you enter the underground and the train comes and you're like, you know, everything needs to move as one, but this ends up kind of going like that. So I take a big clip. So this is like a really giant one that I bought at Sally's in America like a couple of years ago. I got this kind of big container of them. They're super strong and they're really solid and they're long. What I like to do is open it up, and I'm going to come right here where it's kind of come towards, like away from the face a little bit more towards the hairline. I'm coming in underneath the hair and I'm weaving it a little bit in and out, and then let it clamp, and then I just slide it into the hair. It just means that this clip is somewhat hidden, but also my swoop is very secure, and it just looks a lot better than if you just shoved a pin right across there. Okay, one final spritz for good luck. So that is my brush out. so much for watching this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it and found it useful. If you have any questions, then of course just leave them below and I will get back to you. Be sure to give this a little thumbs up, leave a comment if you like, and I will see you next time. I had lipstick on my teeth the whole time. I hope nobody saw that.